This is episode number 175. Today we're featuring artist Kathie Odom.
This is the PleinAir Podcast with Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of PleinAir Magazine. In the PleinAir Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called PleinAir, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it plein air. Others say plain air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhoads.
Thank you, Jim Kipping, and welcome everybody to the PleinAir Podcast, and happy summer. I'm not sure it's officially summer, but when I think of summer being, June 1st and on, we're into summertime. Of course, here in Texas, it's really, really, really hot. So, been summer for a while here. We all deserve a little bit of summertime. We've all been kind of stuck inside, so it's nice to be able to get outside a little bit and get beyond the cold weather. I don't know about you, but my goal is to do more plein air painting than ever before. I love being out. I love doing painting. I'm tired of being cooped up. So I'm going to leave my easel set up right outside the house and just do more painting. Even though I can't necessarily get out every day, I'm going to do a painting of something and just try to get really good at it this summer. I'm looking forward to a grand celebration of being able to get together again of plein air painting at the PleinAir Convention this August in Santa Fe, our first summertime convention. It was originally going to be in May in Denver, but we had to cancel that and postpone it. So Santa Fe, we're going to do it safely. And if for some reason we do have to cancel or you have to cancel because of quarantine issues or safety issues, please know that we will guarantee that you get your money back, or you can apply it to a future event if you wish to. Go to pleinairconvention.com, look at the faculty. Everybody's still planning to come, and we're going to have a great time. Also, if you're new to plein air painting, make sure you get our free ebook called 240 Plein Air Tips at pleinairtips.com. Coming up after the interview, I've got some art marketing questions answered in the Marketing Minute. First, right to our interview with Kathie Odom. Kathie Odom, welcome to the PleinAir Podcast.
Oh, it's so good to be here.
So for the benefit of everybody listening, it's nice to be able to picture where one is. Where are you?
East Tennessee, about 10 miles from the entrance of the Smoky Mountain National Park.
Oh, what a beautiful area.
It is.
Now, are you a Tennessee native?
I am. I grew up in Jackson, Tennessee, which is west, and came to the University of Tennessee, met my fella, and stayed in the east part.
All right, terrific. Well, for the benefit of the people who may or may not yet know you, tell us a little bit about what it is you do and what your secret sauce is. What makes you unique?
I paint, and I paint a lot. Mostly plein air. Absolutely love it. It changed my life about 10 years ago. And now trying to get more and more into the studio, but on a day like today, I would be outside. It's just beautiful. My secret sauce.
Or your superpower. What's your superpower? What is it you do?
Well, I work hard. I am a worker. And so I don't play around. I want to be serious about my art. And but then again, I want to stay where I'm really loving it and enjoying it. I think that's when the best art happens.
They always say that, 90% of success is showing up, and that hard work, that idea of having a good solid work ethic, there's just almost nothing that can overcome that.
Well, I would agree with you. I come from hardworking people, and I think that it really helps me and gives me an advantage for sure.
You said that 10 years ago, plein air painting changed your life. Let's go into this. Tell me, were you painting before 10 years ago? What transpired that plein air changed your life?
Okay, I was an art major and just got scared about staying in the fine arts department and went into art ed and did not teach a day. I have not taught a day in my life in a school.
So you graduated with an art degree, an art education degree.
Yes, and got married pretty soon after graduating, and so life took on a whole nother look when you're crazy about who you're married to. They're about good things that you want to help with, and actually I just pretty much put art to the side. And when I did start working in some jobs, they were all creative. I have been a picture framer, a faux finisher, a decorator. What else can I say? Several jobs in just different creative realms. And then all of a sudden got a gift of a workshop at at John C. Campbell Folk School, and at the age of 50. And another thing is I had my nest had emptied. My children, how dare them, left me.
How dare they?
And how dare they? And also, which was sad, lost both of my parents during those years. Real soon after as the kids were flying away. And actually, to get a little bit more, to say a little bit more about that, my mother passed from ALS, and it's a horrible, horrible disease. And I just adored her. And the fact that she could not move and she missed out on so much of what she loved to do, that was like huge for me. All of a sudden, it was a way of saying, Kathie, don't neglect what you really want in life anymore. And so that really helped the whole starting up into art be very significant for me. And I think the giver of the birthday gift really saw that. And so the minute after the workshop, I was pinching myself, wondering if I was still here.
Who was the workshop? Who taught the workshop, and what was the subject?
This is really embarrassing. I cannot remember the instructor's name, but it was
This is a good reason to have branding. As a that I can tell you that I've gone through the same thing. It's like there are people I can't remember, and it's like they didn't continue to stay visible to me. So it's not my fault; it's their fault.
Maybe so, but I'll tell you, the true teacher in the whole thing was just grasping a few techniques, and immediately we were thrown outside. It's a beautiful farm where this craft school is, and gorgeous, and it just spoke to me, and I'm sitting here pinching myself going, I'm outside, I love this, and I'm doing what I've wanted to do for years. And it was a great start, and after that I just couldn't stop. It was like a drug,
so
a really wonderful drug.
The workshop was a plein air workshop, though.
It wasn't set up to teach that was not the wording of the workshop, but there was, in fact, a building dedicated to painting. And we started indoors just talking and getting and watching a demo. And then they started talking this outside thing. And I went, oh, you've got to be kidding. This is going to be great. So that was, I think, such a gift to me that it included the plein air experience right off the bat.
So you go to the workshop, you take the workshop, then you start going outdoors to paint.
Yes.
And what happened?
I got home and thought, I've got to find somebody. I've got to get somebody, a mentor, and winded up finding a great mentor in actually real close to where I've just moved. And his name is Jeremy Doss. And he had studied a little bit under Richard Schmid. He had definitely studied Richard's work, and he was teaching in that realm, in that style. And it didn't take long for me to know I had landed in the right place. And he immediately started taking us out. Outside to paint. And that was, and then I guess I sat under him for about a year. And it was a class. There were several of us, and but I just couldn't get enough of it, and learned a great deal from him. And then he moved, and we then started. I say we, there were a few students and myself that started a plein air group in Knoxville, Tennessee and surrounding areas. And it has been going ever since, which I would say has been about almost 10 years.
Well, it's very rare that I talk to somebody who has accomplished what you've accomplished in a 10-year period of time. To think that yes, you had some art education, but you also took probably close to 20 years off. And then you took it again, you started plein air painting, and now, you've got successful workshops, you've got a video out, you've been on stage at the plein air convention, you have developed a career, you're selling a lot of paintings. How does this happen?
By the grace of God, I think is the answer I have. That and a lot of work. Plein air events came into the picture, and if you want a good teacher, you put yourself out there and you enter these wonderful events, and then you paint up to 3 paintings a day during the events, or at least I do, because I'm there to work. I'm in a new area. It's beautiful. I want to capture everything I can. I'm trying to slow down and really get more thoughtful about things, but gosh, when you're around, events are only in beautiful places. And so that just got under my skin. And but if you want a good teacher, you will, like I said, put yourself out there, get invited to one of these, and use it as an opportunity to just put paint to canvas.
Well, let's talk about that, because I think that's an important thing. First off, putting yourself out there, you've got to figure out how to get invited to an event. How did that happen for you?
I was in the middle of a workshop with Roger Dale Brown, and learning from him. And at some point in the workshop, he said, "Kathie, I really think you're ready for a plein air event." At the time, I had no idea they existed.
Yeah.
And I said, "What are you talking about?" And at that, it took other ears overhearing that. And to be honest, this husband of mine has just fallen for art. He has fallen for what I do. He sees the need for an artist to have a helper. And he didn't have to hear it twice. And he was then just looking for, studying, looking for what is this he's talking about. I'm going to get Kathie signed up. And
Buddy has been essentially like your manager, I assume. That's the impression I get. He's been kind of helping along, handling your career. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we take a lot of grief for that in some ways, because I know there's some artists out there working double time and doing a lot on their own. But
well, there's no reason to give you grief for that. I mean, it's like giving someone grief for being organized and figuring out how to delegate things. I mean, it is a gift that a lot of people don't have the ability to have. Some of us have very gifted spouses who can help us in various ways, and that's a beautiful thing if they can do that. Some of us have spouses that don't have the gift and some don't have the time, but it's a great mixture if you can get it, because it can speed your progress, because now you got two people working full-time on you, or maybe one of them part-time on you.
Yes. He does have another job, and he has got a capacity that I am just amazed at. But if he were sitting here with us, he would say every artist should get a helper, should hire somebody, even if it's their teenage kid that knows the computer better than you do. He said they need an allowance, pay them a little money and get some help. I would say that what I hear from him, and which has been the greatest thing for me to hear, is I want to keep you at the easel. And, I started this late, and I really appreciate that. The more I'm in front of the easel, I hope the better I will be.
Well, I want to talk about that, because I think that's a really also important topic, is that there is a distraction factor that takes us away from the easel. And and I'm not being critical of anybody, because we all have to do what we have to do. And some of us have no choice but to do everything ourselves. But what happens is, because we're struggling to make a living, we're trying to figure out how to make ends meet. Next thing you know, we're doing things like we're adding stuff to our plate. So now, instead of painting full time, you're doing workshops, or you're doing events, or you're doing other such things. And those things are all positives, but sometimes they can turn into negatives. I can think of an artist who told me that she was doing so many events that she wasn't able to do studio painting anymore. And as a result, she wasn't making the kind of money she wanted to make, because she made more money on studio paintings than the smaller paintings. And so, there's always a give and a take. And if you're stretching yourself too thin, you have to understand that if you're leaning towards doing something yourself that somebody else could be doing for you, you're going to suffer one way or the other. This is a classic business principle. And it sounds like this has been a real blessing, having your husband involved. And I think his advice is good, is if you've got a buddy, somebody who can help you, somebody you can pay a little bit of money to, that money will be amplified, so that small amount of money you're going to spend with a helper will amplify your career in some way.
Absolutely. Just to go back even further, when I started painting, there were a multitude of distractions, because I was living my life in a different way, when I started. And I had to learn to take time to do my art, and that it was okay. I had to give myself permission to do it. And one of the great helpers of that was taking a class weekly and then starting the PleinAir group that met weekly. And I had to let my world know that Tuesdays were off limits to anything else. I was painting unless there was an emergency. And of course, I have a friend that says people first. I said, well, maybe people first. It depends on the problem or if it is.
Yeah. I think that we as artists tend to allow other distractions to take us over. And it's real easy. If you're a full-time artist, it's real easy to allow yourself to be distracted by, all the stuff in life that we have to do. But, if you were going to a 9-to-5 job, that 8 hours a day, you would not schedule those doctor appointments during that day or certain things to happen during that day. You'd schedule the cable guy to come after work or whatever if you could. And yet, what happens is we are not putting in our 8 hours or our 10 hours or whatever it is on the things that are going to make us the most progress. And so it's real easy to get distracted. So I like the idea that you say, look, this is a non-negotiable, that on Tuesdays, for instance, no matter what's coming on Tuesdays, when I've got my PleinAir group, that's all I do. So at least you're forcing yourself to get out at least once a week.
Yes, that's true.
So you've got your non-negotiables. You've got your events that you do, your PleinAir painting event, or your thing with your friends and so on.
Yes.
That's terrific.
But then, of course, that has all really changed in that it has become a career for me, and I have to protect the time even more. Right now, on this day, because we moved a couple of months ago, the distraction now is our new place. And I keep seeing things that I need to do to get us here living, and get into a routine. And, but Eric, I'm trying to embrace that because I have really done a lot of events, as we talked about earlier, and put myself under a lot of deadlines. And every now and then, I take a break. I walk away for a little while. Yeah. And
what value does that bring to you?
Oh, such freshness when I'm really ready to get back into it. I get myself to the point that I'm just as excited as when I just started. But I have a whole lot more tools in my toolbox. So the start is like, what can I experiment with? What have I even learned while I'm not painting? Just observing things and letting life teach me a little bit more, which always goes into somehow my painting.
So you told me when you were in Austin, Texas at our soundstage shooting your video, and I interviewed you then, and I want you to share this again because I thought it was valuable. You said that there was something that ignited something deep down within you. Can you talk to me about that?
There's several things, I guess, and I don't exactly remember what I said that day.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what you said. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
No. That the fact that I can turn around and paint something that has always been, well, let me take it in another way. If I can paint the life that I have never lived or wish that I had had the opportunity to live, some nostalgic things, my granddaddy was a builder. I had another granddaddy that was a welder. Construction being creative, or that's in my genes. And if I could ask them questions today, what a gift that would be. But as I stand in front of a structure, a building, a man-made thing, and I can sit there and paint it and want to know exactly how it went together. There is something about just a board of wood that is there on that barn or that building, and I want to paint it. I want to paint the board. I don't simplify always when it comes to that, because that's the part of the story that really touches me. And it's developing my style by going to those deep within me. Maybe it's sentimental thoughts.
So when you're driving down the road looking for a place to paint, and you screech on the brakes and you get out and you find something that you love, and what is it that what's your process to really capture the emotion that you're feeling?
I put myself in the buildings. I wonder what it would be like to live there. I wonder about the people that live there. There's an area in the Smoky Mountains where city people had wonderful mountain cabins. And I go up there and get in the middle of those cabins and just hear the kids laughing, hollering at each other to go to the swimming hole. I'm smelling whatever the parents are putting together for dinner. There's something about pulling nature, man-made things, and then the people that fill them that fascinates me. And
how do you translate that into a painting? How do you get that sense of emotion onto a canvas?
Well, I hope I do some.
Yeah, we all do.
But I think it's just having those thoughts that run through my heart, that run through my arm, that pick up the paint and put it on the canvas. I'm looking for any little tidbits of color. If it's one leaf that has turned early in the fall, or just how the light will hit the boards I talked about earlier. I don't know. I don't know, other than what I've just said, other than I feel that I'm pulling from something within me when I'm painting.
So what is your goal? When someone is looking at that painting, trying to decide whether or not to buy it, or once it's hanging on their wall, what do you want to have occur?
Well, what has occurred that is very encouraging to me is I will get responses that just took me back in time. Or I remember my grandparents living in something much like that home that you've painted. Or that reminded me of being in the Smokies and little river that's running through the campground where we used to camp. You just took me right back there. Anything like that is very, very encouraging to me. I want things hanging in my home that are not just beautiful, but have a little piece of me in them that take me somewhere.
Those are the most powerful stories when you're working a show and somebody walks up and says, I remember that spot, or that reminds me of that thing. When they have an emotional response like that, that to me is the best compliment.
I would agree.
So you're doing some teaching, and I always like to try to get the people on the podcast to teach a little bit too. How do you translate some important lessons to people? You probably never have listened to the podcast before, but
yes, I have. Let me say that it's my walking partner a lot of the times.
Well, that's nice.
Love it, love it.
So the idea is, you know what we do, and the idea is that we have people all over the world who are tuning in. Some of them are little bitty baby plein air painters. Some of them have never painted before, and of course others deeply experienced. So I'd like you to impart some wisdom upon us that we can take and apply it to our painting, our work. No pressure. Can you do that?
I think so.
All right.
I can do a little bit.
All right.
I would say first thing is courage. I walk up to a scene, and one of the greatest things that was said to me once was, I wonder what that looks like if it's painted.
If it's what?
And if it's painted. And I say to myself, I wonder what it'll look like if Kathie Odom paints it. And it takes a lot of pressure off. I don't have to completely render what's in front of me. But then I would go on to say, get the sketchbooks out. No matter the timing, how hurried you may be, or I would say my best paintings is when I have sketched what I'm about to paint. I know the scene a lot better. I know what to leave out, what to simplify, what would really be the focal point. I know the lay of the land. Even if it's a still life, I know that still life, and I call it getting the lay of the land. I really, really enjoy my sketches, and because they're my memories. And as paintings are bought and leave the nest, I always have that sketch, and that sketch is the memory of the experience.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
I'm really high on that. I used to go out at first and get so excited that I would just dive into the paint, and I can see a difference in my work by the sketch. Then, as far as my paintings go, I am more of an Alla Prima painter. I love a brush stroke, and when one happens that I fall for, I am going to try my best not to disturb it. And I love the freshness of that. A lot of people say that my paintings are fresh and that the color is good.
All right, how do you accomplish that? Because that's easier said than done. What do you do to make sure that you've got a nice, good, thick, fluent brush stroke? And what do you do to make sure your colors are fresh?
I don't dig in. I don't do a lot of blending on my canvas. I use a Rosemary 279 brush that's very soft, and it can lay on my painting drawing on the canvas in a way that doesn't disturb the color, and it lays on. And I'm very I guess it's a natural thing, but there are different pressure points on a painting for me when I know to take that brush and just get that paint on and scrub in, but then I know when to lighten up.
Now, do you use a medium with your paint? Do you use it straight out of the tube? Do you do something to thin it out? Or thicken it up? What do you do to get the juicy brush stroke?
I I use solvent-free gel by Gamblin. And I think that came from being a plein air painter. You get out there and you're painting, and you know that the painting is going to be for sale wet. And I was starting to lose some life about the paint colors, when the oxidation happens and they go dull on you. And that solvent-free gel will keep a painting, even as it starts to dry, it still has a lot of life about it. So I actually did it just to help me sell a painting.
So it doesn't sink in like especially if you're using a burnt umber or something which dries out and goes flat, that doesn't occur.
If I remember to get a dab of that solvent in there, sometimes I'm so excited I forget. But also I use an oil primed canvas. I'm a big fan of Centurion, and I use it, and it tends to stay on top of the canvas and not soak in. So I use the linen, oil-based, and then also the way I love how it works is I can pull off. I can pull the paint off when I need to get back to some brights. It's a very workable surface, and I also use Raymar, which does the same thing, oil primed. But on the Raymar version, it has a little grit and some texture, and depending on the scene, when I walk up to it, I choose between that Centurion that's a little smoother and the Raymar, which has a little texture, and I let the scene tell me which one to go to.
See, you're using your golf clubs properly. The idea that you've got to have the right club for the right job, and that's something you're doing, is you're selecting a canvas based on the scene and what you envision. So do you paint that painting in your head? You've drawn it out, but have you painted it in your head and know what the finished painting is kind of going to look like before you start it?
I love that question, because I'm kind of blown away when anybody says they know what the painting is going to look like when it's done. For me, it's a complete surprise. Every painting is I have my hopes and I have my tools, and I'm learning how to manipulate things. But to be honest, it's exciting for me still, because I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. And I want to keep it that way. But to say that the more I learn, the more exciting it gets also. I just don't want to get bored with it. And
you talked earlier, Kathie, about knowing what to leave out and knowing that you don't need to put everything in. Can you explain that concept to the people who might not really understand what that means?
Yes. When I started painting outside, everything interested me because I wanted to know how to paint it all. And as I've come along and watched other great painters and taken great workshops from them, I've learned more and more about this simplicity thing. And it's, hey, you can paint a second painting of the other part of the scene. Zoom in and take hold of one of the subjects in your scene, and that tends to make the shape stronger and the painting stronger.
So what I hear you saying is a single focal point rather than the temptation of, I like that focal point and I like that tree, but I also like that tree. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, yes, but in my mind, and from things that I've learned, is if I've got the one tree that's my focal point, a little more detail, a little bit sharper lines there. But remember, that other tree would make a great supporting actor. I mean, but just paint it looser, have the edges softer, make it go further back in space.
Don't put everything in focus.
Exactly. And then you get to let the brush just dance and be, more painterly. And so I get really excited about finish a painting after the focal point may be done already, and then just let it happen. And that's not easy to learn. Finishing a painting sometimes can be harder than anything, but I think it's a lot. The reason it's hard is that we won't let go, and we won't free ourselves up to not do as much detail.
Interesting. So what else can you teach us?
Oh my.
No pressure. No pressure at all.
Well, I guess from the beginning, values were just so hard for me because I love color. I'm looking at a mountain that's in the distance, but in the Smokies, the mountains are pretty close up. You don't have the distance of mountains that you do in the West, because if you're in them, and I'm sitting here looking at a mountain that's green, but yet it needs to go into the distance, and then the things in front of them are even greener in Tennessee. So there's this just pushing the color. I might be seeing one thing, but I'm also using my head and knowing what atmosphere does, and making it a little bluer in the distance. I don't always see that. And so it's studying the scene a lot more, really squinting down. I can then see value. And it's a simple thing, but it's taught me a whole lot.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yes.
Makes a huge difference. Now, what are the things that you find that you have to work on the most when you're working with students?
A lot of patience. I mean, it's just so much fun, and they're excited. And I find that a lot of times students will be so excited about painting, they forget that they're there to learn. And I would really, really highly suggest to anybody that takes a workshop is to sometimes put the paintbrush down and really observe what's being taught. And then it's just a delight. It's what happens when you're in a PleinAir event, or you're at the PleinAir convention and so many people are painting, and the subjects are the same, but yet each person's personality as an artist comes out, and they're all different.
That's what I love. When I'm at the PleinAir convention, or in the Adirondacks or Fall Color Week or any of those events, I can be standing next to 25 other people painting the same scene, and as I walk down the path, not one of them is the same. I mean, every single composition is different. Everybody's got their own vision. I think that's the most exciting thing about it.
I would agree. I would so agree. I used to go to workshops and would just come on my way home devastated that, okay, now I've learned a completely new way of painting. And I thought I was doing okay before I went. And then, all this new information comes to me. Now I go to a workshop, and my one goal is to see what one thing I come away with that will make me more Kathie than maybe that teacher that I was watching or painter that I was observing. I'm trying to take the pressure off myself to realize that each little tidbit, wherever they come from, is making me more me as a painter. And all of a sudden, that made so much sense to me. I want my paintings to be unique. And that took a while, but and I still have to tell myself that every now and then. but just to walk away from each one with an aha moment is a goal for me.
Wow, that's tough to have an aha moment with each one.
Well, at least, I mean, even if it's tiny, something that makes you better outside or in the studio or, yeah.
So what's next for you? You obviously have, you've got a thriving career. What are you going to do next? What is it you want to do that you haven't done yet?
This is really exciting for me. And with the pandemic going on, it's right here before me, but it's to paint my backyard. I think it was Matt Smith at a workshop that I was a part of down in Georgia said, we all should be painting our backyard. And it's definitely way down deep in me to love it. And sometimes what I love is harder for me to paint, to be honest. Probably the emotions are a little bit too much. But I want to know my backyard as a painter, and I want to share it with people, where I live, how the people live around here, what structures they built, or what rivers go through here. That's my goal. And not that I want to quit traveling. I absolutely love it, but I do feel that I should be painting my backyard.
All right. Well, you better get to it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I got a lot of backyard to paint.
I already have, but I want to dive in a little deeper.
All right. So, lightning round. I do this once in a while. The idea is give me a tidbit of wisdom on a subject.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Clouds.
Oh, I want to do better at clouds.
Okay.
No, putting really a warm white into them to let that the light of the sun work. Yeah, definitely not one of the things I paint a lot of.
No, you don't have any clouds in Tennessee, I guess.
Oh, we do. They're beautiful, but I tend to hone in on the lower than the clouds.
Okay. Well, okay, let's talk about that. Cropping.
Yeah. Well, goodness, this composition is huge. And being able to, sometimes the sky isn't even needed in a painting, but the light, you're feeling the light hit off of your subjects. That's a lot of fun. Sometimes I have a sliver of sky, and every now and then I'll break loose and put my landscape down low. And when the sky is just irresistible, give it a go. Normally in my paintings, the sky is painted last. I just work that way. But if I walk up on a scene and it's early morning and that lavender is out there and the fog is, kind of, it's just soft and there's just a moment with the sky, then I get it in first because I know for sure it's going to change. As a plein air painter, you've got to get on what you want to paint pretty quick.
All right. So do you, and at what point do you stabilize? Because you have constantly moving light. And, you could have been working on a painting for an hour, and then all of a sudden you get like this incredible light that changes everything, and you say, I want to capture that. Or do you do that? Do you not do that?
If it's a streak of light and it's hitting the ground or a roof of a building and it's just happened, I'll do it. Who can resist? But I pretty much try to stay with what was going on in my sketch. And in my sketch, I make reference to where the shadows were, where the light is. I will even write down and draw a line to something special that was happening. I have tried to chase the light before, and it's not a good idea. But I do have a visual memory that I'm very grateful for, and it keeps me in check most of the time.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Greens, painting greens.
Oh, wow. I've got to know how to paint greens because I live in Tennessee.
Yeah. Well, tell us what's the trick? Because you've managed, we have a painting here that you left at the studio. It's now hanging on our wall, by the way.
No.
And when Lori saw it, she said, that's going in the living room. And so, it has these brilliant greens, yet they don't have that bitey, overly tacky feel to them. So what's the key to getting that right?
Well, okay. I have at least 4 yellows on my palette. I use Rembrandt Viridian. I won't use any other brand of Viridian. It's clean, it's clear, and I can do some great greens with it. But if I want to soften a little bit, I have this little mud pile in the corner of my palette where I've scraped from the last painting. And that little mud pile doesn't get used tremendously in my paintings, but I will always test it in some of my greens. And it doesn't take much. That is so intense when you scrape all of your paints together and make that mud pile. It's very intense. So you just use a little bit, and I can get some really beautiful, I think, colors of green with that. That sometimes yes, sometimes no. It really depends on what's in front of me and what I'm looking at. I don't spend a lot of time just trying to kill myself to get it right. But if it's beautiful on my palette, I believe it'll be beautiful in my painting. And I have just some recipes. I've got them all in my head, and that helps to know your colors and your palette and what they will do, especially when you're out. You do
color charts?
I have done color charts. I haven't done the extensive ones. Shame on me. I need to get that done. I've just been too busy painting. But I have done a green color chart with my palette, and I can get a purple mixing with green, and a beautiful lavender purple. So to experiment with your colors is huge. From what you can find is a great thing.
All right. Well, Kathie, this has been an absolutely delightful time. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with everybody before we roll?
I really appreciate you. You were really a worker too, and I've witnessed that. And thank you for all you're doing with the Facebook things, especially now that we can't really be with our friends when we're painting. That's been a huge help to me. And thanks for having me to Austin. It was just awesome.
It was fun. It was really a nice time. And I think you kind of came, you were like about the last of the people we were able to visit with. And I think you came, we were already starting to social distance. I remember we couldn't give each other hugs. It was kind of like high fives in the air.
Well, I'm really glad that I got to do it. And I really look forward to Santa Fe.
Yeah, we do as well.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do at Santa Fe?
Well, I am demoing in the, what do y'all call the room where everybody's selling everything?
The exhibit hall, yeah.
Yes, I'll be there doing a demo in there, but I will be there with my sketchbook and trying to get one of those aha moments from really great artists.
Well, and you're going to work in the field as a field painter as well to help people if they need a little help, right?
Yes, and I really look forward to that.
All right. Well, Kathie Odom, thank you for being on the PleinAir Podcast.
Thank you, Eric. What a privilege. Thanks.
Well, thanks again to Kathie Odom. I'm very impressed with her. Are you ready for some marketing ideas?
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art, Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
In the Marketing Minute, I try to answer your marketing questions, which of course you can email me, eric@artmarketing.com. Here is a lesson. Here's a question from Carla. I don't know where Carla's from. It says, how do I get my art seen? I live in a small town and they want my work. They just don't want to buy it. Now, Carla, you're not alone. Sometimes people value things more if they are at a distance. It's called the consultant's rule. You will not hire a consultant in your town, but you'll pay more for that person and hire them if they live 100 miles away, or even more if they're 1,000 miles away. It seems to be true in the art world too. So you're not alone. You know, people oftentimes think that buying art in New York is better. New Yorkers won't buy it in New York. They'll buy it in LA. You know, it's kind of funny. But, you know, it's true to some extent in people's heads. You know, they've got this hang up. So it can be a distance thing. So you could just be in a gallery elsewhere and then make a living, and that's a cool thing. Not everybody, though, wants it for free. Usually people who can't afford it want it for free. So I always say, stand in the river where the money is flowing. Find an affluent marketplace. Where do the people with money who could buy paintings hang out in your area? Do a show at a local affluent restaurant. Do a show at a high-end country club or a golf club or someplace, you know, hair salon where all the wealthy, affluent people go. Do something and you will sell. You will have success there, assuming your work is holding up, and you got to be ready to make sure it's holding up. But it probably is. And so people are willing to pay for things that are of quality. And so get it out there. The key to marketing is your presence. Get it known, build awareness, build your brand, and repeat. Do charity events, raise your profile, and it will raise your sales. Next question comes from Amanda. Amanda says, if I'm going to put some really big marketing dollars behind advertising, what is the biggest bang for my buck? Paid social media ads, printed publications, how much in each? 50-50 or 30-70, etc. Well, Amanda, I honestly can't answer that question because I don't know your strategy. And you can't answer it either till you know your strategy. You have to pick one single goal. This is the mistake everybody says. You know, they're like, well, I want to sell some paintings, but I also want to build my brand. And I also want to do this. I also want to do that. Pick one goal, because that one goal will determine how and why and where you spend your money. Now, you will get side benefits with one goal no matter what, but you have to focus on that one goal. So there are steps to each goal. Most goals of any substance take 2 to 3 years to accomplish, sometimes more, sometimes less. So what is the one thing you absolutely must get done in the next 3 years, as if your career depends on it? Because it does. In terms of how much each, don't make that mistake. Don't dilute your effectiveness. Now, I'm a big Facebook advertiser. I spent a huge amount of money just last week, but I also am a huge magazine advertiser, online advertiser. I do a lot of advertising for a lot of my projects because I'm a marketing guy. Of course I advertise, but I don't recommend you spend money in social media unless you have a giant war chest, a big war chest, and quite frankly, unless you know how to do it. You're competing to outbid companies for proper ad space, and honestly, I don't think it works very well for art. I've seen some people do it, but I'm not really convinced. And it can work well for branding, but you got to make sure you're branding to the right people. It's very expensive for branding. And I think the key to most media is that you want to own it, dominate it. One media property, one magazine, or one website, and dominate it for 3 or more years. And once you've dominated, then you've got to keep your momentum and just kind of be committed to that. But once you're getting fruit out of it, then you can start spending money in other places as well. But if you divide it up, you're going to slow down your effectiveness. You're going to slow down, it's like I see people say, well, I'll buy a little in this issue and a little bit in this magazine, a little in that magazine, and then you dilute it and you're not being effective. The same exact people need to see you 7 to 10 times over and over and over again before they'll even make a decision to buy. So focus on dominating something. That's one of the reasons our magazines are in business. We teach people to dominate. That's what will happen. And of course, you will see a huge shift in your career if you do it that way. But what happens? Happens so many times. People are like, I'm not seeing enough results fast enough. So they stop and they kill their momentum. And they've already got like 5 or 6 impressions. They just need a couple more impressions with certain people, and those people will start buying. But they back out too soon. It's very frustrating. Anyway, don't throw your money away. Advertising's expensive. You got to do it right. And only big advertisers like Coca-Cola or Mitsubishi or Mercedes or somebody can afford to dominate a lot of media. I can't afford to. You probably can't afford to. Some people can, but you dominate one thing first, keep it alive for years. It will pay volumes to you. Volumes. Anyway, I hope it's helpful. This has been the Art Marketing Minute.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
And remember to check out the PleinAir Convention at pleinairconvention.com. We're going to have a great time. If you've not seen my blog where I talk about art, life, philosophy, stuff, and very important things, check it out. It's called Sunday Coffee. You can find it at coffeewitheric.com. Well, this is always fun. We'll do it again sometime how about next week? I'll see you then. I'm Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of PleinAir Magazine. Remember, it's a big world out there. Go paint it. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
This has been the PleinAir Podcast with PleinAir Magazine's Eric Rhoads. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.